By stating your age and name.
I'm 56 and my name is Antonia Cardenas.
Okay.
Tony is my nickname.
Okay. So, what disorders have you been diagnosed with?
I'm diagnosed with severe depression, PTSD, and impulse control
Okay.
issues.
So, do you know the root cause of all of these issues? Like, where do they start from?
I know that I have been depressed since about the age of 11. I could tell I was different, and I knew that there was something wrong with me, but I didn't really know until I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed with severe depression when I was 31 or 30 years old, somewhere in there. And the mental health professionals told me that because I have military sexual trauma, because I have trauma from the military, that my depression became worse. It became severe because of the trauma. And PTSD I developed because I have had anxiety before. In my youth, I had ulcers and I had anxiety, so that's partly genetic, plus the depression is genetic, but also because of the military sexual trauma, the anxiety disorder became worse and became PTSD.
So, how has the PTSD affected your home life?
I've been controlled by men in personal relationships. I've been controlled by them because if they yelled at me or were very possessive, and I put up with a lot of abuse because I got scared and got stuck in that fear for a lot of years. And so I'd say after about 5 years of, or 10 years of abusive relationships, I pulled myself out of it. And now I know that that's a trigger. Anybody that tries to control me or abuse me or raise their voice at me, I stay away from. So in that way, I have serious trust issues, and I really spend a lot of time alone.
Okay. So, has it affected those around you at all?
I'm sure it has affected my children and my immediate family, my niece and my twin sister, because I don't like to be in crowds, and so I don't go to social functions with them as often as they'd like. So I know it's affected them, but it has also, I've tried to educate them about what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, so that they can be more understanding and empathetic, and try to analyze their own health, mental health.
Okay. So, what coping mechanisms have you found helpful?
When I get thoughts that are, when I get bad thoughts, negative thoughts, I use CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, to change the thoughts. I almost sometimes have to talk back to my thoughts and say, no, I'm not a bad person, or no, I'm not a failure. Change that thought so that it doesn't affect my self-esteem or my feelings or my behavior, because it comes as a thought. So if I'm able to change that thought right away, then it can't affect my feelings or my behavior. But it doesn't always happen, and I get my system like just short circuits, and I just go down, and I have to be in bed resting for a while until I can get the strength to get back up. So the triggers are anybody that yells at me or is rude with me or humiliates me in any way. That's what brings me down. So I kind of stay away from being in town. I go to shopping early in the morning and try to avoid people, most people.
All right. Do you feel like you have to work harder in society than most people because of your disorder?
Yes, I do. Because I have all these triggers, and so I'm, fighting with those thoughts in my head, and working with my brain to seem to be functional, somewhat functional. So yes, I believe that I do have to work harder, but it just makes me stronger. I don't see it as a weakness.
Do you think other disorders have stemmed from your PTSD at all? Or other other disorders have gotten worse because of your PTSD?
Yes, because I over the years have had so many triggers that when I have triggers, the body responds with anxiety. So heart beating fast, not being able to think clearly, having racing thoughts, and over the years, doctors have explained to me that my immune system has been taxed because of that. And so I have noticed that if I get cold, sudden temperature changes, I get sick. I get real sick very easily. So yeah, my immune system has been taxed.
All right. Do you think this disorder at all affects your ability to work?
Yes, I think it does, because the last few jobs I've tried, I've kind of lashed out at some people that were rude with me. And so I got fired. I've just lashed out at being just told to fill up the coffee pot. And I'd already filled it up, but the way they look at me and the way they say it, it triggers me, and I just lose it sometimes. I just have a really hard time with doing that in front of other people, because the humiliation is a trigger, because I was raped in front of senior officers in the Army.
Okay.
And they saw that.
So have you changed at all since your adolescent years? And if so, in what ways?
in my adolescent years, I was pretty happy. I remember at age 16, I was really good and I wasn't overweight, but my father, he would kick me when I went out with a guy one time, and he kicked me and called me a whore, and that affected my self-esteem. And then there was a lot of pressure put on us to be perfect, to do well in school, because we were teachers' kids. And that pressure made me overeat. And the fact that we couldn't go out and socialize and be with other people, just in groups, was hard on the self-esteem and self-confidence. And so that kind of carried on through my life. So I think it's really important that teenagers are given the freedom to interact with groups of people and to have relationships, which is normal. So I think that affected me quite a bit, because I developed an eating disorder because of that.
Okay, here's the last question. So, if you can give advice to someone with PTSD, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that it's PTSD is not anything to be ashamed of. It just means that not all people develop PTSD that experience trauma. And what I learned in the research center is that there's certain people that are sensitive develop PTSD, that are have certain sensitive personality traits, and it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you have to learn some therapeutic tools to navigate your way through life, and to stick with those tools, and that'll help you understand yourself better and keep your self-esteem up. It's might seem that it's more of a struggle than other people, but other people have their own struggles too. Just learn more about PTSD and learn how to manage your symptoms as best you can, and always work on changing those negative thoughts, and understand your triggers, so that you're always strong and prepared for whatever comes.
Okay, so that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you a lot for your time and for telling these stories. And yeah.
You're welcome.